Hi Glam fam, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're an old subscriber, welcome back. If you're a new subscriber, welcome. It's good to have you here. So today I'm going to be working on this model. I'm going to be creating this gorgeous eyeshadow look on her today, and it's a bold look. So I'm starting off with cleansing her face, and then I hydrated her face, but I didn't catch that on camera. Then I went in with my serum. It's a moisturizing serum from Omari Code Cosmetics. It's a Nigerian brand. It's a very good serum, and if you're looking to get a very good hydrating serum to help lock in enough moisture in your client's skin, this is your go-to. It's very efficient, very effective. This leaves your skin looking all plump, really radiant, properly hydrated. It gives that glow from within, and which is very nice. Then I went in with my moisturizer. It's a hydrating moisturizer, and I can't remember the brand. Okay, I think it's from Adventure Cosmetics, yeah. And I used this. I focused more under the eyes because I wanted to lock in as much moisture as possible under the eye. The reason is because you do not want the under eyes to look all flaky and old after your makeup, so you need to lock in as much moisture as possible. And then I spread it all around the face and just blended it properly into her skin, to lock in more hydration as possible. And then I went in with my hydrating primer from Omari Code. I like to use this hydrating primer. If I'm not using this hydrating primer from Omari Code, I'm using the MS Metics Grip hydrating primer. So this helps to give that radiant finish. I don't want the skin to be too matte. I don't want it to look too dry. I still want it to glow underneath. So I use this radiant this before I go in with my mattifying primer. And then my mattifying primer, the one I used in this video, is from Rimmel Cosmetics. So I'm just going to be blending that in around her T-zone area, most especially, and then I'm still stretching that out to the rest of her face, just a little bit. I don't want the face to be too oily. I still don't want it to be too matte. That's why I used the hydrating primer underneath first before I went in with this. I just blended that in. Foundation, I like to finish one section of the face first before going in to another section, and I'm just blending that out generously. And I'm really impressed with my foundation selection for this particular client. Like, it was a perfect shade match, and I just loved everything. The foundation sat properly, and I just blended that in effortlessly. Using this buffing brush. Is very thick brush for my foundation. It makes it easy for me to blend, so I like to use it. I just blend it all over her face, and then I blend it with my dark foundation for contour. So I just contoured all around the perimeters of her face, her forehead area, the sides of her cheekbone, under her cheekbone rather. And I blended everything nicely. Everything sat pretty. She was on her skin, literally. Then I went in with my blush, and I just blended this at the apples of her cheek, stretching it slightly towards her forehead, so her temples rather, not really her forehead but her temples. And I just blended on both sides of her face. I did the same thing, blended it to make sure that there were no harsh lines. Please take your blending seriously, because this is like the foundation of your makeup. How your makeup looks at the end of the day is dependent on how well you blend. Afterwards, I went in with my concealer, and just to brighten her under eyes. this process of highlighting is very important and must not be skipped no matter what. Even if your client is not comfortable with highlighting her under eyes, please don't listen to her, because number one, if a client has dark circles under the eyes or has eye bags, this is what is going to take all of that away. So if you do not do this, or you don't do it properly, maybe you just do very minimal highlighting, it's going to reflect in your work when you're done. So this is very important, and you have to know where you're placing your highlighters. You're not placing all over the face. You're placing it in just the high points of the face. I don't know if this makes sense, but you're placing it on the high points of the face, and then you have to blend gently, because you do not want to make it have like harsh lines or patches. So you have to blend properly and make everything seamless and even and buttery, if that makes sense. It should look buttery, like butter, like very creamy, very soft. So on this client, I'm going to be doing 2 layers of highlighting. So this is the first layer, and I'm going to be blending this out, and I'm lifting her face with my concealer. I'm blending this out and lifting it at the same time. So I'm going to blend that, press all the product in, and making sure that everything has blended out properly without leaving any harsh lines, without leaving any patches anywhere, because if you do leave patches and harsh lines and then you apply powder, that's the beginning of your problems. Do you get? So you have to blend properly. And then, like I said, I am doing 2 layers. So this is the second layer, and this is a brighter concealer. It's brighter than the one I used initially because I need it to pop. I need her under eyes to be bright. This is what is going to take all the eye bags away, all the sleepiness. Maybe if your client is stressed out and you just want to give her that refreshed baby girl look, this is what gives you that look. It's not your foundation, it's not your powder, it is the concealer that does that. So you can't miss it. Afterwards, I went ahead to apply powder under her eyes, like my compact powder, pressed powder. I applied it under her eyes to set it, because I didn't want it to move. I didn't want the product to move, while I contour her nose. So I didn't want that to move. So I decided to set it first before going in with my contour. And then I also decided to do the rest of the face as well, just set everywhere. And then I went in with my nose contour. For my nose contour, I am using a dark foundation. The same foundation that I used to contour the rest of her face is what I'm using to contour her nose. And I'm dragging from the brow down to, the bridge of the nose. I'm dragging it from the brow down, as you can see, and I'm blending in. I started off with blending with my brush before I went in with my beauty blender, because I did not want to have any harsh lines anywhere. I didn't want it to show. I didn't want any demarcation, from where my highlighting started from and stopped, and from where my contour was starting from. So I needed to blend everything seamlessly again. So everything needs to sit pretty. And then after that, I just went back in with my powder contour to intensify the contour I had already done on her face. So I'm just, intensifying that whole contour powder, contouring all the places that I had already cream contoured, and just giving her face that, snatched, defined look. After that, I went ahead to spray and lock everything in before I went in with my setting powder. Please don't apply setting powder on a wet face. Once you spray, you allow it to dry, and the places you're applying your setting powder are everywhere that you highlighted. Your setting powder goes to all the places that you highlighted. So under the eyes, the forehead area, the bridge of the nose, the chin, the cupid's bow. So you just put setting powder everywhere there. And if you want to be extra, you can use the setting powder to, sharpen out your contour line. But I didn't do that here. I didn't do that for this client. So, but then these are just the places that your setting powder goes, and it's very important. The bridge of the nose, use it to sharpen out that pointed nose illusion effect that you're trying to get. Make sure that you do it. It's very important. I went ahead to intensify my powder contour, my contour on the nose. So I went with my powder in a dark shade and just intensifying that and making sure it's popping and it's snatched, because that's what we are trying to get, a snatched nose. I don't play with this step. So yeah, that's just it. For eyes, I went in with my eyeshadow primer, to set the base for my eyeshadow that's coming. And this is very important. It's important to use an eyeshadow primer first before you go in with your eyeshadow. The reason is that it helps, to get your eyeshadow to stick and pop even better, especially if you're using an eyeshadow that is not properly pigmented. You need to have a base. You could either use your eyeshadow primer or use a concealer to create that base, but you need a base. And then make sure to blend out that line before you start to apply any product whatsoever, because if you don't blend out that line or the edges of the primer, the cream product, your eyeshadow is not going to be properly blended. There are going to be like lines, harsh lines everywhere, and it's going to look messy. So I did that, and then I went in with my transition shade. It's a warm orange shade. I like to use the shade for transition before I started my main eyeshadow. So for my main eyeshadow, I'm using a purple eyeshadow at the outer corner of the eye. So I'm just building color. I'm not going heavy from the start. I'm just taking products little by little, just building it up to the color that I want it to give me, so to the consistency that I want. So I just keep building, adding. It's easier to build than to take out. So if you start heavy-handedly, it's going to be a lot and it's going to stress you out when you're trying to blend it out. So it's better you start little by little and just keep progressing till you get your desired result. That's what I did. So I kept on doing that till I got what I wanted, and this is what I wanted to achieve, and that was it. Then I went in with my main eyeshadow, which is a pink, and I just patted that on the lid gently. I didn't want it to be all over the place, so I was very precise. I was trying to be really careful, and I was very precise to place it where I wanted it to be, and that was what I did. And then I went back to blend out, making sure that there's no harsh lines and demarcations, and there's between the pink eyeshadow and the purple. So I just blended everything out, did the same thing on the other side, and then went in with my liner. For my liner, I'm using my gel liner and this tiny brush. It is a disposable brush. I like to use this. If you've been watching my other videos, you would know that this is what I use for my eyeliner and for my brows. So I use this to line. It gives me a lot of precision. You can get this from any store that sells makeup around you. Just disposable eyeliner brushes. So you can get this. It's just like 100 naira. I don't know how much you'll sell it, but where I buy from is 100 naira. And then I used that, and then I created this very soft wing, and just extend her eyes a little bit because I wanted it to look a little bit wider. So I just did that, and then I blended out. I wanted to smoke that out a bit, so I smoked it out with an eyeshadow and stretch it underneath her eyelids as well, and just smoked everything out and gave it that beautiful, gorgeous look. Then I went in with my mascara and just got her eyelashes to go sexy and a bit dolly, So yeah, I just did that on both sides of her eyes. I used my mascara, to separate her lashes and make sure that, when I bring in my false lashes, it's going to blend in properly and there will be no product on the lashes. For my brows, I like to use my brow gel from Hager and Esther, and using this same, tiny brush that I use for my eyeliner, I also use it to outline my brows. So I just outline the bottom part of my brows and the top part of my brows following the brow hairline. I am not trying to give my client a different brow shape. I'm not trying to change her brow shape. I am just going to be working with her natural brow shape. I just outline that and fill in the sparse areas, the places that has little or no hairs. I just fill that in, and then I go with my pencil, to create, illusion hair-like strokes from the top of her brows, from the front part of her brows. I just create these hair-like strokes and blend everything in, just giving that illusion that she has fuller hair on her brows. I'm not doing too much. I'm just highlighting what she already has, or maybe I should use the word accentuating what she already has. So I am not creating something new or something different. I'm just working with her natural brow hair. After I do that, I will go in with my concealer to just define the brow that I already did. So I'm not correcting because I try to make sure that my brow was neat enough. So I don't need to correct. I am just defining and cleaning it out so that it stands out properly, like it's beautiful, it's clean, and it's crisp. So I'm just doing that, and I'm making sure to blend with a blending brush because you're not about to leave that harsh concealer looking like that. So you have to blend it and make sure not to ruin your eyeshadow. So you have to be careful, blend properly, but also be careful with your blending. I had to blend the excess setting powder that I had under her eyes, and I'm using this tiny brush because I like to get into the inner corners of the eyes properly and the outer corners of the eyes. So using the big brush won't give me the result that I want. So I like to start off with this tiny brush and blend that excess out. And I'm actually not blending, not sweeping it out. I'm actually pressing it into the skin, because I want to retain the brightness. And then I also blend the rest of her face with powder, like normal her skin powder, and I just blend that in properly, making sure that everything is seated well before I go in with my blush. And I just apply this on her temples, on her cheekbones. I made sure to apply this enough because I wanted it to pop, and I kept on building till I got the desired result that I wanted. I did the same thing on both sides of her face. I extended the blush to the upper part, her forehead area a little bit, because I just like to add a little warmth, to the contour that I did. So not too much, just like the excess blush that is left on my brush. That's what I use on her forehead area. And I went in to apply her lashes. These lashes are from Chi lashes. So I just took the style and I used it on her, and it was really beautiful. And I did the same thing on the other side of her face or her eye. I went ahead to line her lips. I'm using a brown lipstick. It's a liquid lipstick from Avon Cosmetics. So I'm using this to line. Instead of using a pencil, I didn't want to use a pencil, so I just went straight on with this. And then after lining both the top and bottom parts of her lips, I blended that out nicely before I came in with my nude lipstick in the middle. The reason why you blend that because you don't want harsh lines, you don't want the demarcation between the brown and the nude, so you have to blend so everything diffuses properly. And I applied the nude and still went out to blend with a tiny brush, and making sure that everything is seated properly. And then I also added I don't know what shade this is, but it's still in the nude family. So, but I wanted the center to be like not pinkish, but like whitish nude. So I popped that in the center and blended it properly. Then I went out to put my lip gloss. I set her face with the mattifying spray from MS Cosmetics. It's called Silhouette. Then I went down to do her bottom mascara, her bottom lashes mascara. So I did that on both sides of her eyes, and further went into spray again with my Soap Pro Cosmetics Seal It spray. You know, I just wanted to lock this makeup. And this is the final look. I hope you love it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and most of all, I hope you learned a thing or two. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, turn on post notifications, so when I make more posts you're going to see, and you won't miss it. Thank you so much. I'd love to see you in my next video. Bye.